junior ranger program in the youth center. And we also at 2 o'clock. To help you sharpen your explorations of the park today, you will also see the park brochure map in your seat. Please take a look at that map, and in a few minutes I'll be going you to identify where we're traveling and what's coming up ahead. This morning, in the northern tip of the bay, up near Ramsey and Marjorie glaciers. Some of the first time-water glaciers that will start to come up around 10:15. That glacier will be in view around that time on the left or one side. Around 11 o'clock, we're going to catch a view of Johns Hopkins Glacier. We'll highlight today Marjorie Glacier, 12:30, full-on time-water glacier. I have to call to attention, actually, our first chance to see a glacier here in the park. It's coming up on the right in about 1 o'clock position. Off the northern tip of this island, Hobbs Island, the water recedes into the distance into what's called Residue Glacier. Looking up there, it floats its way down. Residue is no longer a tide-water glacier. It doesn't float around in the sea like Marjorie Johns Hopkins. It's still a full-on glacier up there. It winds its way down through the valley, eventually melting into about 1 river, that water moving out to the glacier. It gives you a great sense of how glaciers flow down the valley, looking into the bands and the twists and turns as they snakes its way down. So when we get up to Marjorie at 12:30, at the time, you're going to grab your coat and camera. Get out on deck to experience for yourself one of the dangers. John Muir may have been the first person of European descent to come here just to see glaciers in action. You see, he had suspected that his beloved Yosemite Valley in California was shaped by glaciers in the distant past. But to know for sure, he had to go where glaciers were still shaping the land. He had heard stories about a place in the Federal District of Alaska where great glaciers still existed. So in 1879, he set off in a steamship for Fort Wrangell, and there he teamed up with a missionary minister and 4 native Tlingit guides in a 35-foot canoe. They paddled that canoe over many of the same waters your ship has traveled over the past couple days, for over 100 miles to reach the bay that British explorer George Vancouver, 100 years earlier, had dubbed Glacier Bay. Paddling north into a bay and dodging icebergs the size of houses, they arrived near where we are. On the right right or starboard side of the ship, there's a partially tree-covered island in the channel. That's Russell Island. It's near where Muir and his companions camped their second night in the bay. At that time, the face of the glacier was astride the middle of the island, right about where we are now. Imagine camping right near a wall of ice hundreds of feet high. This is how Muir described it when he visited here. Quote, "How impressive the thunder of ice was rolling, swelling, reverberating through the solid stillness. I was too happy to see." Muir's writings about his adventures here spawned the first wave of tourism in Glacier Bay. Steamships started bringing people up here in the 1880s and 90s, maybe for many of the same reasons you're here. Adventure, Alaskan wilderness, and ice. Port side is going to be our first close pass of a true full-on tidewater glacier, Lamplugh Glacier. As a matter of fact, some of that blue-white ice is just starting to come into view up above that mountain ridge off to the left here, just starting to peek into view. Lamplugh Glacier is one that tells a lot of different stories. But one of the ones that's most obvious to people when they look at it is that blue-white color of ice. Why is glacier ice that unusually vibrant color of blue? You see, when glacier ice forms under those intense pressures, it squeezes out almost all of the air bubbles. That pure glacier ice performs a beautiful feat. It absorbs most of the wavelengths of light that come down from the sun, but it reflects back that intense glacial blue wavelength. Can you think of anything else in nature that produces similarly intense blue colors? Jewels and certain minerals like blue diamonds and sapphires reflect similarly intense colors. Most of the face of a glacier appears white because as ice melts, it produces irregularities that reflect back the full spectrum of white light. But often in places where ice from the interior of the glacier has been exposed to recent calving or crevasses, those cracks that open up in the glaciers where you can see into the glacier, in those places you can witness that vibrant blue ice. The wavelengths of light and bouncing back to our eyes is the scientific explanation. But I often like to go back to John Muir's explanation of why he explained ice was blue. When someone asked him in the 1800s, he said, "If you were as cold as a glacier, you would be blue too."
It's on already? Hold it down.
Yeah. Now click. Coffee with a lot of milk to keep you warm and warm.
I'll take two. I'm not good at this.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah. Better look
If you
at it.
just
You might
take
need
one
two
of
more.
these, let us know. See, you did good.
I did good.
Yeah.
It's something.
To you, the white color probably stands out to you. What other colors do you see? That gray, gravelly rock on there. So it's a good indication that glaciers are actually moving things. People often refer to them as rivers of ice, and that's an excellent description. In the case of Lamplugh Glacier, that ice is actually moving at about 2 to 3 feet a day. And as that ice moves along, it's scraping along the mountains on either side. Those mountains are crumbling and depositing rock and gravel along either side of the glacier. Some people say that glaciers eat mountains for breakfast. And Lamplugh is a good example of that, where it's scraping along and getting that rock deposition on either side. The glaciers really change and form this landscape. Most of that change takes place over decades, centuries, but just over 1 year ago, on the end of June 2016, there was a moment where this glacier made a change, a catastrophic change that took place in a matter of seconds. End of June 2016, an event occurred in the middle of the night that registered on seismographs throughout the area. An overflight by an aircraft the next day showed a massive landslide. A whole chunk of a mountainside had fallen off on the upper slopes of Lamplugh Glacier, far enough back that we can't quite see it from this angle, but it dropped 132 million tons of debris, basically enough rock and gravel that would fill about 20 ships of this size across the upper reaches of that glacier, all in a matter of seconds. All throughout this area, for the week afterwards, you can actually taste the flavor of rock dust in the air floating from that massive landslide that occurred. That event interested scientists and geologists quite a bit. I did some research on that, and they identified it and associated with it as one of the consequences of some of the changing climate we have. You see, Lamplugh Glacier is one of those glaciers that's following the trend of 95% of glaciers in Alaska and getting smaller. And as glaciers shrink, they not only get shorter at the face, but they also pull back at the sides. In the case of Lamplugh, the geologists believe that as the ice pulls back from the side of these steep mountain slopes, it's basically pulling out the foundation from under the mountains. And some of those mountain slopes come tumbling down catastrophically. It's one of the unexpected and varied consequences of warming that we've experienced throughout the world, particularly here in the northern latitudes in Alaska. Here in Glacier Bay, you have only to look around you to see lots of different examples of how glaciers can change the land. But believe it or not, we're very close to an example of how glaciers can change people. So if you look out the left or port side of the ship and look up that steep rocky slope up there, you can just see, shrouded in clouds, a relatively diminutive mountain. It's called Mount Cooper. It's only about 7,000 feet tall, small by standards around here. But that mountain tells a story about how glaciers can change people. You see, it's named for a gentleman named William Cooper, a scientist who first came here in 1916, but he didn't come here for glaciers. He came here to learn about how life returns to a landscape covered by ice just 2 generations before. After spending a few field seasons here, Cooper was amazed and awestruck by this wild, intact landscape. He described it like this, quote, "A place where mountain, glacier, water, forest, animal life combine to make an ensemble unexcelled." Cooper and an organization called the Ecological Society of America petitioned President Calvin Coolidge to make Glacier Bay part of the new National Park Service as a national monument in 1925. A later generation of conservationists would petition Congress to have this redesignated as Glacier Bay National Park in 1980. This place continues to inspire scientists from all over the world as a living laboratory where they can learn about topics ranging from climate change to harbor seals. It's a rare, intact ecosystem from which we can learn firsthand how the processes of life work